Thank you, everybody. And for those online, welcome to the Rangitukia Order Paper Ordinary Council meeting of today's date, 31st of August. We have had the council prayer this morning at another function, so there. I've had no apologies for this meeting. Welcome, everybody. And we do have a public forum, and I welcome Brian McCaw. Brian, if you would like to come forward. You've requested a public forum, which gives you 10 minutes, including question time. How you use that time is up to yourself. But first, before that time officially starts, Brian, thank you very much for appearing with us. We go back quite a long way in terms of your business and this council, so it's absolutely welcome, the council. Time is yours.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora, everybody. My name's Brian McGaw. I'm here to introduce a cycle trail concept for the Rangitukia. But I know I'm supposed to not diverge too much, but I really need to start with a short story, okay? So in 1978, I came to Taihape. Okay, and Taihape's population at the time was 2,800 people. Now, the reason why I remember that is because a friend of mine lived at the south end of Taihape, right beside the sign, and when him and his wife had their first child, he snuck out in the middle of the night and painted out the 0 and put a 1. So it became 2,801. Taihape's population now is 1,800. It got down to 1,575, and the population is an estimate at 1,800. Mangaweka in 2006 had a population of 112, now it has a population of 91. Hunterville had a population in 2006 of 560 odd, and now it's down to 500. Now, I see in the long-term plan that the forecast for the Rangitukia is to have 25,000 inhabitants by somebody, I'm not sure the date, but anyway, 25,000. And I could easily see in Bulls and Martin where that may be the case. But there's certainly nothing going on in the northern Rangitukia that's going to lead to an increase in population. In April, I was lucky enough to go and ride the Alps to Ocean cycle trail. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a cycle trail that goes from Mount Cook to Oamaru at the sea. It's 300 kilometres long, and they have around about 10,000 people riding the full trail a year. And particularly, I want to talk about one small town on that trail called Kuro. Now, Kuro's claim to fame is Richie McCaw came from there. Okay, so that's its claim to fame. There isn't much else going on in Kuro until the cycle trail went through it. Okay, now it has 2 pubs, 4 cafes, a couple of restaurants, accommodation places, and has a population of 400 people. It's pumping. Okay, and the difference is that cycle trail. 10,000 people a year ride the cycle trail from Mount Cook to Oamaru, and they spend on average between $2,000 and $3,000 per person. So you can imagine the effect that has on the local economies of Waitaki and Mackenzie. Small, rural, relatively rural districts. So from that, I came home. I've always been quite interested in rural depopulation, depopulation, I say rather than repopulation, because I don't see a lot of that going on. And the reality is, farming in the northern Rangitukia is not going to drive more people or more services into that area. We need other things to break the cycle. And I'm not saying that a cycle trail would be the only thing that's required, but from what I've seen and the research we've done, and Kim put together, she shared it with you on your information, page 84, I believe. There's a full background proposal of what I've done the research on so far, and Kim Skirman and Mark Grace have also assisted me with that research. The concept is a trail that goes from the summit of the Napier Taihape Road, where the catchments either go to the east coast or to the west coast. So we could say it's the high point of the roading network there anyway. And the trail would finish 4 sections later, and I don't use the word days, I use the word sections, because people may choose to ride at varying rates. And it will finish at Kuitiata, Turakina Beach. So The benefits of the trail for the small towns is the concept would be that people would spend the night before the trail, riding the trail in Taihape. A shuttle service would take them out to the start, and then they would ride through the district, staying in Mangaweka, staying in Hunterville, on their way to the sea. That's in a nutshell. What am I looking for? I suppose I'm looking for council support for the concept because, even though I've been a tourist operator for almost 40 years, this is an altruistic project, it benefits everybody, especially in the Northern Rangitikei. We would be looking for funding to assist us with a feasibility study. We're conscious that, if we're going to spend public money on this, there has to be a feasibility study. And the feedback I've had from the people we've approached to do a feasibility study from an economic viewpoint is that it's a no-brainer. That the economic impact would be that great. Just an aside to talk about economic impacts, the Great Trail Network on latest research says that the visitor expenditure on those great trails, cycling trails, was $950 million last year. So we're not talking peanuts here, it's potentially could be quite transformative for the Northern Rangitikei. And I think all the rest of the details there, and I don't want to bore you with that. So if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Cowkin?
Thank you, really exciting looking at this stuff and having a read through it. Feasibility study, what's in your experience or research, what sort of value would be required to get a feasibility study underway?
Look, my understanding that if there's going to be public money spent, then there need to be a feasibility study. I may not be correct on that, but that's my understanding. And we're looking at around about 20,000 for a feasibility study. That is with the companies and they've had a lot of experience in other cycle trials around the country.
Thank you. Councillor Valgiri, go ahead.
So there is a trail through our district, I believe. Tell me about that and how well used is that and how what you're doing proposing differ?
Okay, thank you. That's gorgeous to see, SEA,
Right.
which I've used the similar name. I was part of setting that up about 20 years ago. We were well before our time. It shares some of the route, but not all of it. I think what we've come up now is a more overarching concept that it really fits what our target market would be, which was basically older people with a little bit of money riding e-bikes and gravel bikers. Yeah.
Supplementary question from me in terms of funding, the 20K, do you see that, is this a request from council to fund 20K or is this the cost of it and asking council to contribute to it?
Of course, it must be great if council said, yeah, it's not on 20K, but failing that, if council would contribute to it, that would be tremendous.
Go Councillor Duncan, Councillor Morton, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Brian. This is a fantastic and very exciting report. I'm just seeing on page 100, you're talking about trail ownership. So what was it that the West Coast Wilderness Trail owners, Grey and Westland District Council do? What was it that they contributed to be then called the owners of that trail?
My understanding, and this is only my understanding of it, is that they own the concept of the West Coast Wilderness Trail and they own the name and they maintain it with assistance from third parties, whether the third parties might be operators on it contributing per customer or charitable sources. So I think there's a lot of different models around New Zealand on this. So the Elster Ocean is owned by the Waitaki and Mackenzie district councils, but how far that funding goes and what each is responsible for, I'm not 100% sure, but Kim Skirm has done quite a lot of research on this and she would be able to give you a more full picture of that than what I can.
Okay, Councillor Moore and Councillor Hira and Councillor Rakawa, at that stage will probably be tight for time. We'll see how I get to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, quickly.
The trail would be public road and private land. Is that right?
That's a really good question. There's only 7 kilometres that's private land, and that is through Rathmoy Farm. And Mark Grace has intimated that he would be comfortable with an easement. And the other 2 off-maintained road sections are both on paper roads. So that goes from Mokai through to Omatani and from Mangariri Road through to Peka Road.
Councillor Hero?
I'd be interested to know, Brian, if you've thought about, and maybe you have, but it's just, I just think seen it in there, any opportunities for iwi within there, especially those that have marae that might be sitting on those roads.
That's a good question too. I've talked to Ngāti Apa and Mokai Pātia. That isn't in the report. And to be honest, at this stage, we really don't know what the opportunities would be. But there will be opportunities. You know, there's only the barest infrastructure on this trail yet, and it's one of those sort of situations where build it and they'll come.
Councillor Rakawa?
Well done. A bit along the lines of what Councillor Hiro said. In terms of you'll be ending up at Koitiata. Great to have a conversation with Tini Waitara out there, and also they, if you would marry in along the lines of the walk along the coast, it might marry in. Well done, thank you.
And I'll finish with Councillor Wong.
On page 96, Brian, you've got funding of $100,000 to fix some of the sections of the road and a budget of $2 million. How much of this do you need to raise before it starts, and where do you think this is going to come from?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think it needs 100,000 probably to get the trails suitable to be used 6 months of the year. That's the sections of the trail that are not presently on a maintained road. But the figure of $2 million, that's assuming that you would take all those bits that aren't on a road and put them at the same standard as the Elster Ocean, which I don't think is really necessary. But, you know, where you're looking at a small trail that's not much wider than this table, that's double fenced and an amazing surface, but that's what $2 million would buy you. And my take is that that would be a very long-term, not very long-term, but a longer-term proposition to get those off-road sections to that sort of standard.
So do you use $100,000 funding?
I think we'd start it off, yeah, get it going, I do.
I need to stop it there, but councillors, I think this is a conversation that could be extended individually with councillors and possibly coming back to further conversation. But under the rules I have. Brian, thank you very much. We totally appreciate the amount of time that you spent on Rangatahi tourism and heading that committee for a number of years. So thank you, and we'll see where it goes, but I'd invite councillors to have a further conversation with you. Good.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Item number 4 of the conflict of interest declarations. Does anybody have conflict of interest for the open council meeting? No. Thank you very much. The confirmation of minutes, looking for alterations and corrections, starting on page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. No, would somebody like to so move, please? Councillor Wilson moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. The item number 7, the follow-up actions from previous meetings. If you go to page 7 and 17, sorry. Any items in the first page? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Just number 8, the Otara Bridge and what's happening there. I have had feedback that they would like better comms around this one, because I think there's been, I know Manawatu are taking the lead on this information, but we do also have updates on our web page, on our website, which are very well received. But in this case, with the recent closure of the bridge, there's been some a dropping of the ball with the communication. I would just like to see us perhaps look at that and put something on our webpage around that. I don't know whether I can go further with that.
I'll ask staff to comment on this in just a second, but my understanding, and I have looked on the website, there is a weekly update.
Yes.
So can you be a little bit more specific around?
Yes,
so
sure.
It's inadequate? Or?
Locals were told that there would be a closure on Monday for the day, and then I think only 12 to 24 hours prior to that, they were then told it would be closed for a week, and they were not informed.
Can I have some, who would take this,
So
give us
I
advice on this, please?
can let you know what I know. We were informed at least a week ago that it was going to be shut on that one day.
Yes.
It didn't come from the contractor that usually emails us. It came directly from NDC. So we put that on our website straight away. NDC are the ones that engage directly with the landowners. That's been clear right from the beginning. So I can't comment on whether they directly gave correspondence to each of those landowners, but we certainly knew about it a week before, but we were only informed it was for the day. So we can follow that up with NDC. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I'd like to have done. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I'm just interested, is the project on track as proposed originally?
Reply from staff. I did go and have a look at it the other day, the bridge. Any comment from
Yeah,
staff?
I can, as far as I know it is, yes. On those weekly updates, they haven't notified us of any delays.
Thank you.
Councillor Rakawa, Councillor Carter, Councillor Rakawa.
Number 9, in terms of the next stage in the process underway for the Ranitike, the Macron. See, what is the next stage?
That's another one for me. So Bonnie at the moment is going around talking to all the iwi. Yeah, she's engaged in that process at the moment.
You happy with the answer?
Yes. Thanks.
Just going back to the bridge, because people watching online will be aware that there has been an objection to the closure for the Targa rally. And was Manawatu Council the lead agency with regard to this? Do you wish to comment? So just because I'm sure there will be people aware of this online and wondering what's going on there. Councillor Carter.
With the Bulls Bowling Club realignment of boundaries, it says here there's 2 other parties interested. Who would, or does that concern us at all?
Sir, any comment? The chair's.
Thank you. I didn't quite catch all of the question.
It says regarding the realignment of the boundaries for the Bulls Bowling Club, and it says there's 2 other parties involved in it as well now.
2 parties other than Rangitikei District, being the bowling club and DTHL, the company that is developing the land next door between the bowling club and Marapihi. Commercial development, and this action is part of their pre-resource consent application work.
And I just read it, there's 2 parties involved, but then it reads there's 2 other parties. So.
Yeah, well, we are to a large extent and also RAN party. Actually part of that.
Does that answer your inquiry?
Thank you.
Any further from the matters arising? Councillor Carter, supplementary or new one?
New one regarding the sign for the waste station opposite the transfer station. New signage, was it just a slip up for the fact of no phone number being put on it?
Absolutely. I've followed that up with Raj and asked him to put the phone number on, which was the original request.
Cheers.
Thank you. I'll move on. Item number 8, the Mayor's report. As I said,
Do you
I'm
want to just move to the action item?
Yes, please. Could somebody move the receipt of that? We'll go councillor Dalgety and councillor Wilson. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 8, the Mayor's report. I'm sorry about the length of it, but there is a lot going on. I'll take any questions. And I'll add a couple of comments first, but first of all, I'll give the opportunity to the Deputy Mayor who attended conference to speak to his report, which is part of the attachment to my Mayor's report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will simply say that the attached report is possibly nothing more than some scribbled notes of mine transferred into a PDF format to enable it to be included in today's order paper and agenda. They are, as I've noted at the bottom, just my loose thoughts on the conference, much of which developed more questions than answers. And I would happily speak to anybody or any of the committee about any of these matters, but I could take up the rest of the afternoon discussing just the points that I've raised there, and I don't think the time's really going to allow to do that. But I do thank the council for the opportunity to attend conference. There are significant matters facing local government and councils across the board. We are not alone, is all I would say in that. So I will just leave it with that, unless there's a specific question that anybody would like to ask of me.
Thank you. Councillor Rapala.
Kia ora, Dave. That was awesome. I looked at your point on one of the workshops you attended, super localism. I'm not sure what page that's on.
Yep.
And it said, so I just wanted to know, in that workshop, is that were they talking about smart cities?
No, localism wasn't a workshop as such. That was an address that was given by the chair of LGNZ, and it is basically just saying this is a new platform that they're looking for councillors to engage in as part of their vision going forward. It wasn't a workshop as such. It's a new vision that they're looking to do, to have a collaborative local voice to take further to central government. Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Pakitiora.
Well, just a comment regarding the item that you've spoken about in your report to do with the opening of the Ngawa block. I just wanted to add my thanks to Adina and the team for getting it done. And it's an excellent amenity for our town. And just to say my disappointment along with that, with the removal of the pulling out of the tree that had been planted.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Can I go back to Chair of Assets report? So I only bring that up because I was particularly struck by the comment asset management funding is not discretionary, and that's great for me. Could you expand on that, how that was presented?
It was basically presented by the premise in that line that said 99% of the assets we need going forward in the future already are there. It's just, are we maintaining them and are we being good stewards of them? The question really fell out of the fact that you really, and us as a council, we really need to understand the condition of our asset. There's no point in replacing a pipe just because the time schedule says it's due for replacement without understanding whether or not it needs to be done. Do you reseal a road just because it's due to be sealed on your schedule, or do you reseal it because there is a need for it? The future needs are going to do it. The comment about the asset funding is not discretionary. Is it, if we are going to look at assets and long-term and sweat assets and take a calculated base as to how we deliver our assets in the future, we need to also fund them. And we need to bring that funding in our line of thinking into our LTP plan processes and our ongoing costs. And if you've got a disconnect between those two things, you're going to be fraught with running into a problem somewhere along the line. So that's where that comment kind of came from.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers, but.
Thank you. I'll make a couple of corrections to my attendance at different things. Item number 24. I didn't attend the Ngātawa Science Technology Roadshow. They did have it, but I was tied up with council on that day, and it was just impossible for me to get there. And the MDG AGM on the same day has been postponed, and I will attend it, but it was postponed. These are obviously taken from my appointments diary ahead of publication. The other couple of things I'll point out in the photographs, there's the bus Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. And I just want you to understand that that bus hasn't been funded by Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. There's a philanthropic person who has funded that bus and the terminals within it. That is an incredible resource. So as a student, you can go onto the bus, you put in your cell phone number, and you start playing with what job you might want. And you might say, you know, I want to be a doctor. And it starts then taking you down series of pathways, testimonials for young people that have gone down through those pathways. It is thousands of light years ahead of walking into the careers officer who probably was appointed as under pressure, shall I say. It is an amazing. So there is a possibility of looking to see if one of these terminals, not the bus itself, could be funded within a library, for instance, for a school. So that is incredible. But I'll take questions. Councillor Duncan first, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Duncan.
Just a comment, 2 comments, if I may. Thank you for your report, and I just wanted to say at the opening of Ngāwa Block, I was very appreciative, and it struck me and was commented on afterwards that you did a very gracious apology to Rugby for the delay in the opening. They had been feeling quite. They had feelings around that, and I think your apology went a long way to mitigating that. So that was really well done. Thank you. And also, I wanted to say, the good news that really strikes me is the increase in the FAR rate from Waka Koutari, and I would really like to see that socialised a bit more, put on our comms to tell people, because everyone's feeling very depressed about the roads. That's a national thing, and this is really good news for the Rangitikei.
So just for those people online, the FAR rate is the financial assistance rate for roading, and of $100 that's spent on our road, 66 of those dollars will come from the government coffers, not our pool. We have done incredibly well out of that funding round. Councillor Dalgety.
Oh, sorry if I didn't pick it up in your report, but how long did the bus spend in our district? And yeah, I was interested in the outcome for the district.
A bit over a day. They can get 60 people through in a morning session. So there were literally hundreds of people going through it. I know from us it went to Hara. But because Mayor's Task Force Jobs had their outcomes were so high, what they did is they decided to, this is a philanthropic person, and he said, oh look, I'll put your signage on the bus. He has funded that bus. He is travelling the country with this program around getting people into work, and in terms of career advice. If you ever get the chance to see it, you'll be amazed. The reason you put your cell phone number in, it then identifies you, and they can follow up and say, this is the stuff you looked at, and possible contacts if you want to engage further. Councillor Carter.
I forwarded your apologies to the Bulls Fire Brigade.
Thank you.
And they're longing to see your shout on the bar.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes. Any further questions? Right, I'll move that the report be received. Looking for second to do that. Councillor Duncan seconding. Those in favour? Aye. The next recommendation is that Council considers the request from Martin RSA for a tree to be planted at Martin Park to commemorate the coronation of King Charles III. This is an unbudgeted expense. So happy that commemoration tree and plaque was funded by DIA, Department of Internal Affairs. If you wanted to progress this recommendation, it would be an unbudgeted expense, and I'm not quite sure the size of that expense. So what I'd suggest is, if you want to know more, the recommendation is Council considers Doesn't say council approved. You happy to move?
I'm happy to move based on the fact it's considered, so I'd like to see a report come back with a cost.
Thank you, councillor Lambert, seconding. Oh, you've got your names there. Thank you very much. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. We move to item number 9, the Chief Executive's report. And I'll pass to the Chief Executive and welcome for Kevin Ross as our interim Chief Executive. Kevin, thank you very much for agreeing to act in that role.
It's been a pleasure today. Yes.
So, yeah, so thank you. So, for those online, Kevin has been appointed interim chief executive while we go through a recruitment process looking for a new chief executive. And I know that it's been a really engaging process for you. And I note that you've pointed out to me on 2 separate occasions that there is no coffee available on Monday and Tuesday mornings, Mark.
Yeah, don't pass that message.
It's a requirement of your standard. Leave it with you.
Well, I have personally found it really engaging and really good people around here, both in staff and the council. But luckily for me, this report was prepared prior to me coming, so I'm delegating that to Carol who actually wrote it.
Actually, sorry, just before you do that, in the Mayor's report, there is the Zone 3 agenda, which will be at Central Hawke's Bay. At this stage, we've reserved 3 rooms. If there is a councillor that wishes to attend, please let us know quickly, because it will be a difficulty in finding accommodation in Central Hawke's Bay. Sorry, my apologies.
That's all right. Okay, so I'll follow what Peter used to do with this one and just go through each of the areas and stop and see if there's any questions. So the first, I'll move to the health, safety and wellbeing report. We've got Kristen Ritchie here if there are any questions. Sharon Grant's on leave at the moment, so Kristen's here to answer any questions.
Councillor Dalgety?
I'd just like to add in the events, but on the 25th of August, the Rangituki Tough Kids is held at McIntyre Reserve, and that involves hundreds of children.
Yeah, these are reported at July events. So
Oh,
they'll
there
be
you go.
in the next month.
Beg your pardon.
Right.
No.
And nothing on health and safety?
Carry on, please.
Staff movements are there, and also the engagement and consultation schedule. We mentioned here again, has been talked about before, the FAR increase, which is really pleasing to see, and Rhonda is in the room, so we will make sure that we get some more comms on our website about this one.
Councillor Duncan?
I don't want to be a pain, but I'm just for meaning, in 7.6, you're talking about a hydrogen roadman. Is that a road map? Or if it is a hydrogen roadman, who is it?
We haven't got to that one yet.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
External submissions. Okay, we'll move on.
I beg your pardon.
Sorry, just note in the staff movements that we've lost a building and compliance officer, and we've heard over the while that there's a industry shortage of those. Just interested to know what risk that sort of poses to us, and are we okay in that space?
I can speak generically. So councils across the board are under real threat. So building officers is a good example of one that a lot of places they've actually been bought from the council into private enterprise and then charging back at a higher rate. So they're a real target. My understanding is that we have got some support around that particular issue, that we only have one. But you can look at any area in council and say there's a risk at the moment. That's the reality.
Thank you. No, please move on.
Okay, so just in terms of the external submissions, so the Connect the Dots, and I know Councillor Wong, you're promoting the submission to Horizons on this one. So Katrina did send around an email a couple of weeks ago about this, and she'll send a draft submission back to you later today, so that it can be lodged on time.
Just before you go off that one, please, congratulations, councillor Wong, on the work that you've done in trying to get people to contribute to that. It has been outstanding. So, thank you. Sorry.
Moving on to the sale and supply of alcohol, which is called the Cellar Door Tasting Amendment Bill. There's a draft in the agenda paper, so if you do have any questions or comments, if you could feed those through to me and we'll lodge that submission. Just a note on the government policy statement for land transport. So MDC will be doing a submission for on this, and we will input if there's anything extra that we need.
Can we first of all receive this Chief Executive's report? Thank you, Councillor Carter, Councillor Whakatiora. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. And you've done the Cellar Door one?
No, I'm just still working through the.
Okay, sorry.
Is that all right? There was another one that I wanted to make mention of. Oh, the protected records one is in there, and you made a comment about that to me. If there's any questions about the Spatial Planning Act and Natural Built Environments Act, Katrina's online. She's our specialist in that area. But there is a recommendation around the cellar door amendment.
Any questions of the reports and submissions?
And I just want to make a note, there was a typo, it should be road map.
The report on archives is quite substantial. I struggled to find, going onto their website, the standard even to compare the submission against. I have absolute faith in Mr. Hodder. It will have been thorough and well researched, and on that basis I'd be happy to support.
That was my take on it too.
Would somebody like to move, so we're speaking to it, that council approve the draft submission on the cellar door tasting amendment bill? Are you happy to move, councillor Lambert?
Yes, very much so, yes.
With
Joy
or
of
without
wine, yes.
amendment?
Sorry?
With or without amendment?
You put me there.
Can we make
Well, without amendment, sorry.
without?
Yeah.
So you're happy to move that?
I better get on to this.
Could I have a seconder to it, please? Councillor Loudon seconding it. Any questions around this?
Just from a safety perspective, I think I'll declare the conflict of interest with my, in a work sense, working for a liquor company. Probably best to just exclude myself from this one.
Thank you very much. Could the records please note conflict of interest registered with Councillor Calkin because of an alliance with a liquor outlet. Any further questions? You wish to speak to your motion? No. Right. Any speakers to the motion? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving to item number 10, the reports for decision. Councillor Okawa.
Sorry, I had a question for 7.8, the helping people with nature thrive. Just wanted to know, is that Katrina, is in the submission about the biodiversity credit system? But
I'm happy to go back. Katrina, you're online?
Sorry, I will just chip in here. No, I thought you were talking about the natural built environment. That's just noting that that has come in. We submissions don't close till November, so we haven't started drafting a response if we're going to at this stage.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving to item number 10, the reports for decision 10.1, the notice of motion petition calling for a citizens initiated referenda on state highway maintenance. I'll move that so we're talking to something, looking for a second or two. Councillor Wilson, questions around it? Look, I'll speak to it very, very quickly. I have to acknowledge, and I have acknowledged in my mayoral report, the amount of work that Neil Holden the Mayor of New Plymouth has done, he has certainly prompted Waka Kotahi into a rethink, and the government subsequently in a rethink around maintenance schedules. They've been announced, and a change of direction in terms of funding principles. This comes from him, and I congratulate him for it. Any other speakers to the motion?
Your Worship, as seconder, yes, only to endorse and support exactly what you just said. It's a significant piece of work that's been done and well worthy of our support.
Right, on that basis, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. I will pass on that we have moved, followed through, and then it will follow through to a council action in terms of staffing. Councillor Moore, you look.
Oh, no, I'm just.
Right. Recommendation that the council approves or does not approve that the CE be authorised to make the petition available at council information centres and appropriate facilities. I'll so move, looking for a seconder to it. This is a follow-up as a result of the first. Councillor Duncan, you seconded. I don't think I need to speak to it. Any speakers or questions?
Just a question, is this us getting into the realms of political field, I guess, in the national election?
You are in the political field.
I know we are, but yeah.
No, absolutely appropriate. In local government, one of the principal roles that you have is one of advocacy. It is asking government to do certain things. And as such, the normal path of direction for this is either the way that he's done it here, or going to local government New Zealand by way of remit, and then to government. This is much more direct.
Yeah, no, that's all I.
Councillor Wilson, Councillor Wong.
Just on that, there was a remit where we supported a local government along a similar line, so we're reinforcing something we've already supported the local government concept via remit.
Correct.
Just a question, we're introducing the position by the New Plymouth District Council, we're not making one for the Rangitikei District Council.
What we're doing is saying that we adopt it and we'll follow exactly what they're doing.
For their district.
No, it's national, it's a national
I thought it was
position.
going to be, okay, just the forms guys, I think, thank you.
It's a national position. Anything else? Okay, can I just scroll please on the main screen? 10.2, the review of the electoral system for 2025 and 2028 elections. And somebody first of all proceed to the report.
Need to vote on the one previous.
I thought we'd done that. All right. That just hadn't been listed. So we'll do it again if you like. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. The review, councillor Pikitola.
Move.
Happy to move the receipt.
Recommendation one, receipt.
Seconding. Councillor Dalgety seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. Who would like to take us through this?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is me. We did have a presentation from Warwick Lamp from elections.com last week, who gave you an explanation on the difference between first past the post and single transferable voting. So hopefully there's no more questions on the voting systems themselves, but I'm happy to have any questions on anything else in there.
I wish you luck with that.
It's incredibly complex.
Councillor Hero.
I have no questions, but I'm happy to move recommendation 2A, approve the electoral system.
First, so you're going for first past the post,
Correct.
looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Dalgety, you had your hand up first, so we're going to move in a seconder. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
I think it's all in the report, and just to say that we currently have Horizons that use this process, first past the post, and I think it's to save confusion, that we stick with the status quo, which is FPP.
I'll take any questions first, if there's anybody seeking clarity on that. No, Councillor Wong, do you wish to speak to it?
I just wanted to actually reinforce what Councillor Pikitoro said, because our election paper will have Horizons as well as our election on it, and to have two different systems on it would be very confusing. So I think it's a very good idea. I support it.
I've had two speakers in favour, councillor Cowcombe, councillor Lambert. Councillor Cowcombe.
I'm going to speak against it. I prefer the voting option of STV, the single transferable voting. And for me, it's about making sure that every vote counts and gets the opportunity to count. It takes away the opportunity for two strong candidates to split the vote and to have that under STV having your vote carry forward. And I understand the concept of being worried that potentially having FPP and STV on the same voting paper may cause confusion, but I think we've got to make a decision on what we think is best for our electorate, not worry what Horizons are doing. And that would be my view on it. So,
Councillor Lambert.
Well, I was going to speak against it, but he said exactly what I was going to say. I've always been a fan of STV. I think that every vote counts, and I think it's a far more fairer system and get greater transparency. I'm a big fan of it.
Councillor Loudon, Councillor Rakawa, Councillor Loudon.
I'm going to speak against it. STV is far more equitable, and the area's been involved with STV before with the Wanganui District House Board votes. I think it's not going to be confusing at all, so I speak against the motion.
Councillor Rakawa, are you going to speak for or against the motion?
Against.
We've had three speakers against. Is there anybody else wanting to speak for? Sorry. Standing orders. Councillor Wilson.
I will be speaking for it because I'm just not sure, after seeing the workshop presentation that we saw the other day, that I'm worried that STV as a deliverable will actually drive down our attendance rate at elections, because I don't think we're aligning ourselves to what we're not aligning ourselves to one uniform voting platform around the country, and I think it will create huge amounts of confusion. And I actually believe that will possibly affect our voter turnout. So.
There's a couple of other councillors indicating that this is a big deal. I am prepared to suspend standing orders to this if that is the wish of council. Does anybody object to that? No? Right, I'll go back to Councillor Rakawa first. Councillor.
Against it, I looked at the STV, I looked at Ruapehu using that system, and I believe that, every vote counts.
Thank you. Councillor.
My question was to set aside standing orders given the interest. Thank you. So you've done that.
Any other speakers? Go back to right of reply. No right of reply.
No, I'm happy to listen to what everyone else has got to say around the table. I've put my opinion and thoughts forward.
I now must put the vote. Those in favour, so this is in favour of first past the post, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 votes carried. Thank you. Anybody voting against wish to be recorded as such? Okay, we've got 3. Councillor Rakawa, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Lambert, Councillor Cowcombe. You did your hand up, but I won't count that. Oh, you just counted. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Better 10.3, this is the Better Off Funding Housing Business Case. Somebody please receive the report. Thank you, Councillor Carter, Councillor Rakawa. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Who's presenting?
Thank you. So I met with His Worship and Councillor Wilson to discuss the terms of reference for the business case for housing, and we agreed that they were very comprehensive. But without the tranche 2 funding, we wondered if they were over ambitious with regards to ongoing resourcing and the cost of any actions identified in the case, and hence agreed to bring it back to council for your consideration whether we should take it back to considering just the Taihape housing only.
Okay, questions of the report? No, would somebody then be brave enough, please, to put up a recommendation? And so it's up for debate. I'll let you have a think about this.
Sorry,
Councillor Duncan,
I am
question?
still unclear exactly how, what the purpose is. It's to bring that $50,000 that we had already got, which was, so you want to change the fact that it was specifically for housing report, and you want to bring it into a whole of district housing report.
Sorry, so just to clarify, originally the business case was going to be for Taihape housing only.
That's right.
And then as part of the annual plan submissions, we got requests to look at subdivisions of land, like council would subdivide land, etc.
In Taihape.
That was district-wide.
District-wide,
Yes, yeah. So now the proposal is to bring it back at looking at Taihape housing.
Specifically, right.
Yes, as opposed to what was indicated was Tui Street. So it's broadening the scope in Taihape. Effectively.
Are you wishing to move, Councillor
Oh,
Wilson?
I was just waiting to see if one of the Northern Ward councillors
Yeah,
might
I'm
want to
happy.
step into that space, that was all.
Councillor Hero,
I'm happy to move up.
under what terms?
The council does request that the scope of bid of, does not.
Can you be very clear about, you've sort of said does and then you've said does not.
Well, I'm just, so delete does not.
So what you're saying is that council does
Request.
I'd like to amend.
does request that the scope of the Better Off Funding Housing business case be amended
Yeah.
to consider suitability for Rangituki District Council owned property in Taupō for housing, etc.
And keep going.
Surplus
Because we haven't finished, what was it?
Well, I mean, personally, I would, if you're going to do it as it's read, I would take away the last sentence.
Selling it.
To consider suitability of all Rangituki District Council owned property in Taihape for housing, full stop.
Would staff like to comment on exactly what the recommendation says, means?
Yes. In the report, I've mentioned that Arno is getting a report done on all property. So as part of that, it will identify which property should be kept, what could be improved, and which is surplus to requirements. And it's proposing if there was any surplus to requirements that could be sold and put towards housing.
So this is tying it, effectively tying it back just to Taihape, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm looking for a seconder because we're discussing something that hasn't really got a seconder here. Councillor Duncan, are you wishing to second?
Yes.
Doesn't sound like you want to.
Enthusiasm.
No seconding.
I sort of feel as though that second has been dragged from somewhere. You wish to speak to your motion?
Understanding the full extent of what the report is. So looking at everything, deciding which things we keep and which things that we don't need and we could get rid of, selling those off, and then that money could go towards anything that we are going to develop. Correct?
Correct.
Is
Does
there
that sound right to you, Joey?
Is there anybody unsure of what you're actually voting for here? Councillor Maughan?
Yeah, is that tying us into, if we've got the surplus land, that the council will build houses in Taihape?
No, it's not, no,
Because we're gonna have this-
any decision like that would have to come back to council.
So this is just identifying the land that could be used for housing, but it doesn't tie the council to doing that housing.
Yeah.
That's what
Key
I'm-
words here are consider the suitability. Councillor Wilson?
Can I speak to the motion? I think the intent of the motion is very good, and I think we're getting a little bit down in the weeds here. Originally, the $50,000 was considered as part of the Better Off funding for housing stock development, specifically focused on Tui Street. So that was a locking in development. What staff are identifying and bringing back to us here is there's a greater scope that we could do with that within Taihape and the community as a whole. But still the intent of the original motion is to develop things in Taihape. But we need to actually get this changed slightly so to enable this scope to be better focused on the delivery of potential housing in Taihape. So just, I'm very much speaking in support of the motion.
Okay. Any other speakers to the motion? Go back, write a reply. They're supporting you anyway, so.
No one's not supporting us, so.
Right, I'll put, no other speakers, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. 11.1, the Gorges to Sea Cycle Trail concept. Somebody like to move the report be received. Councillor Milne moving, Councillor Duncan seconding. And that's the only recommendation that's sitting there. So put it to the vote, those in favour? Aye. Just received. Now, do you wish to speak to it? You just come to the table with regard to this.
Well, is there any questions on the report itself at all? So I just did some research into how other councils work with their cycle trails in terms of council and working group trust relationships. So, yeah, if there were any questions around that, I'm happy to take them. Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
I haven't got any questions, but just to say that it is a really good report. I think it got said with the presentation that Brian gave. And just thank you for your expertise in putting it together.
Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just interested in when I have four-wheel driven, not biked, some of these areas in the South Island. They are double fenced and actually defenced. So I was interested in the cost of that. And yeah,
So the research I've done points to about $100 per metre in terms of double fencing, gravelling, water tabling, culvert. And as Brian mentioned, there's about 20 kilometres of the whole 200 kilometres that needs that done.
Thank you.
I have questions from the side. Councillor Loudon.
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea, and it just will signify to New Zealand that we are here. I've had comment before about the rail tunnels up on Mangaweka Hill, that they should be utilised for a walking track. I'm just wondering whether those could be utilised in your cycle track. Apparently there's some quite spectacular views from the rail tunnels.
Yeah, I know they're talking, they are, yeah.
I don't know, but it's just...
It's, yes, very muddy, they would need water table. But I think the way the cycle trail comes at the moment connects quite well, because it brings the gravel roads in line with the small sections through farmland.
You won't get through the tunnels at the moment. You'll be chest deep in water.
Yeah.
Councillor Kalkin.
Just for my benefit, I believe that when there was public forum, we couldn't bring a motion off the back of it, but because there's a report, are we able to bring a motion?
Yeah, listen, I was going to make a comment on exactly this. So the recommendations that are put in by council staff by and large. That does not stop you as councillors putting a recommendation on the table. And for instance, you may, and I hinted at it in terms of that it may be useful, for instance, for you to decide somebody should be liaising further as a councillor, or you may be requesting council staff to continue to look at what it would cost to develop this in terms of the business case and whatever. That is up to you as councillors. My Chief Executive, do you have any comment around process and suggestion?
No, I'm pretty familiar with this because I've done some work with Reringa-Ranuku, which has a lot of those trails on, so I'll put you in contact with him, which can give you background. There's a trails group that discusses exactly this, so that would help. But I've got with your process, no issue whatsoever.
Yeah. Councillor Duncan.
Well, I have a question around it, because if we're looking at 20k for a feasibility report and we're looking at, obviously other councils have put in quite significant inputs, whether it's financial or commitment to maintenance, etc. Is this the sort of thing that needs to go into a long-term plan with us?
My opinion would be if you wanted to commit to this or potentially commit to it, and it could involve significant cost, it's just a business case, it would probably be wise to. What I'd suggest to you is if you're wanting to put a motion on the table, that the motion be open-ended to allow staff to investigate, rather than a motion that locks staff into an absolute process. For instance, if you said, we're going to fund this, normally what's got to happen is staff have to come back with the implications, and the implications may be that there is insufficient resource to be able to progress something, or there may be acts of law that prohibit it or whatever. So if you leave it open-ended to say, a recommendation to say that asking the staff to investigate or see the possibility of setting up a group to pursue it.
There's a whole, through I won't say King, but there's a whole series of different levels. Like you can have them double fenced, that's the Rolls Royce model. You can have them open. It's more about getting enduring access that the council would be worried about, so that, you know, whether you're on private land, getting some easement over that to ensure that that wasn't then lost. So there's a whole variety of layers that you can go down to, but in working with corporate and any other interested party could develop that into probably a series of scenarios that you could follow. But if you want to get onto the whole one that you're talking about with defence, that's a lot of money, and that would certainly, you'd have to consult on that. But being part of or initiating that group or participating in that group probably isn't a long-term an issue.
With permission of your Chief Executive.
Sure. Thank you. So when I was doing some research through other cycle trail trusts, they all suggested that we use the New Zealand Cycle Trail guidelines to create the trails, and then that gives us a regulation, I guess a high regulation of trail, which can then be classed as a great ride down the track, which is what we would want to be doing. They've all said don't do it half pie, say, or don't underdo it. Do it properly and use those guidelines.
I just want to add that the station hotel probably at the moment is being kept alive by cyclists on the National Trail. They've got a really good reputation and it's worked really, really well for them.
And I'm really looking for a motion here. Councillor Dalgety. Sorry, Councillor
I do have a motion that I'd like to put forward. And that is that council staff engage with Brian and Mark, as listed in the report, to investigate costings and next steps on a feasibility study.
Okay, so your motion would lead something like, with reference to the report, boom, 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 that's number, that's staff one.
Investigate costings and next steps for a feasibility study.
Can I just ask staff whether that would be an issue for them?
That sounds great.
Are you looking for a seconder to that? Councillor Wong, you're seconding. Speak to your motion.
Yeah, I would. It's not often someone walks into council and starts talking about something that you had on your mind as something you wanted to deliver. in your 3 years on council. It's something that I'm really passionate about, is the outdoors. The benefits to well-being and the economy have been proven time and time again. So look, for me, this is a no-brainer to at least explore. It's not a commitment to do anything more than that at this point, but boy, the opportunity here is exciting.
The recommendation that should be up on the screen behind me, is that council staff engage with Brian McGaw and Mark Race to investigate costings and next steps with regard to the details, please, so we can link it back in.
Gorgeous to see cycle trail concept.
So you say, Attachment 1, 11.1.
Yeah, so that's no, that would cover it, my view, that would go, so if it's all right with you, you're moving the
No,
motion.
that's how he spelled it.
Yes, it's C spelled that way.
So C.
Second, are you happy with the motion?
Capitals for gorgeous to cycle trail concept, please. Proper hour.
You wish to speak to it further?
Not happy.
Any other speakers to it? Councillor Wilson.
I just want to ask one question and seek a little bit of clarity. I'll direct it at our interim chief executive, but I suspect he may direct it elsewhere. Does this, do we have the staffing capacity and cost within budgets to do that, even though it says we investigate, everything comes at a cost? Can this be accommodated, whatever the cost may be, within existing budgets?
I think next steps would give scope anyway.
I certainly think the investigation would be within what we can do.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving to 11.2, the PMO office report, and welcome Adina back to the table. Would somebody like to move the receipt of it? Thank you. Councillor Lambert moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Adina, you have to take us through.
So as usual, happy to take questions to each project as we go through. I might just take ahead the Taipi Town Hall project, where you can see under our miscellaneous section, we have updated a bit more details around the next step in the progress. It has been brought to my attention by some people of the public and people that are interested in the project to see what are the next steps. So basically wanted to outline again the resolutions that were made through the annual plan process, and that based on the resolutions we're working on setting up this public workshop at the end of September. There will be plenty of notice, so we're planning to at least have 4 weeks notice so that people can make sure they can attend. The workshop is scheduled to be outside of working hours so that people that have work there can actually attend entirely. There's a number of people that will be specifically invited because we know that through the annual plan process, some submissions asked to be invited. There's specific iwi that have already raised that they would be part of this workshop. And then also we are aware of other people that have been using the town hall in the past. So it will be quite a wide and large workshop. Goal of the workshop is to not to decide what colour the wall will be, but it will be about what is the purpose of the building, how is the community and how will the users wanting to use the building. So what do we need to deliver in that space so that the building is going to stand there for the next 50, 100 years doing the job that we are today thinking it should be doing for the next 50 to 100 years.
Yeah, thank you, Adina. My concern here is aligning this with what were quite specific recommendations by council that were passed, where it said that we would strengthen heat and make compliance after having a discussion with the users. And this just seems to be moving to a different level. And that's my concern. I guess as soon as we can get these people together, the better, and we can clarify that. We've got Councillor Duncan and Councillor Dalgety, but Is there anything you want to further say first?
Yes, I would like actually probably to comment on that. So the workshop and the way that we approach it, to me at the moment, I don't have a clear defined scope. And like I know that we need to be compliant and strengthening needs to occur and heating. The key thing for usability of a building though is that we don't just start doing these works. We need to make sure that the plans that we're putting in place are going to be sufficient for the objectives and the purpose of the building at the end. And so part of the resolution that was formed to engage with the user group for the design, this is the workshop. So the whole purpose is to flesh out what are the priorities, what are the most important things, so that we don't have a situation like the changing rooms in Halsey.
Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Ms Foley, for this report. It's great, and congratulations again on the amenities bill. Can I just ask that, I mean, I'm always speaking for myself, but I wonder if the Northern Ward councillors can be included.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you.
Somebody else wanted to speak to us, Councillor Wilson, was it you?
Oh, no, just saying I'd like to be involved in that process up there.
Chair of Assets, yeah.
Absolutely.
Councillor Dalgety.
Yeah, my question was, is there expectation that councillors will be attending this workshop?
So the intention will be that the workshop will be inviting all councillors that are interested, and this is a project that is funded by the whole district, and I think there's a lot of interest in this project, so I would be keen to have it open for all councillors that are interested to join. There will also be an opening to the public, so that if there is someone that we are not aware of or that hasn't maybe raised their interest or their use of the building, because we're talking about not past use but future use. So we just don't want to miss someone. So this is why we're going to invite a very wide group, and we invite the public. And after the, or in the process, in the workshop basically, what we want to do is really define who's the core user group that we will ongoing have feedback sessions. So for the amenities buildings, we had, for the building, not buildings, we had this park user group, and we engaged with them throughout the design process. And it was not a consultation, it's a check-in of saying, we have done this design to this stage, we wanted to share it with you and see if there's anything that's a massive flag that someone would have missed. So it's a feedback conversation that we want to set up with a more core group after the wider group, basically.
Anything further on this item? Councillor
Couple of things. I presume you're going to invite the architects to hear this or not?
The architects?
Architects.
Yes, there will be a couple of architects invited.
And also, this could be quite an interesting debate in Taihape. And I was wondering whether you should have an independent sort of person chairing this process. I think it might be helpful to keep it rolling.
It is scheduled to be an external facilitator.
But also, can I just add that somebody that knows the community well, like Galen, ensures that we get all the right people here as well.
Yes.
So although you go for a public notice, it's actually a key to get to the movers and shakers. And I understand that there could be some factions in Taihape that need to be managed, you know, to make sure that the right people get into that. So that's why you'd have somebody that knows.
Anything further on this item? No? Thank you. We move on.
And we go through our processes. So we start with a centralisation project. Probably the update here is that we have sort of a draft master plan that we are reviewing next week. Basically, we have received it from our group that is working on this, so there's progress being made, which is great. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
So that 25, this is Martin Halls, that $25 million, we will have figures updating that, obviously going into the LTP stuff.
So the difficulty with updating these figures, we mentioned this, I think, in our asset and infrastructure most recently in the committee meeting. When we have these projects that are highly complex, obviously, with where we're going down the road of identifying the best practical option, the pricing and the costing for the best practical option can only be confidently made when we're closer to that option. So at the moment, I don't know if you recall this, during the annual plan process, we gave you a percentage of confidence in the numbers that some of our projects we're looking at and working at. And I remember that it was quite surprising that some of these numbers were quite low in confidence. And the key thing is that these projects are, at the moment, I could give you any sort of number and it might or might not be right. Because at the moment, we have to go down the process that is typical for a wastewater consent, that you have to, for example, like with Ratana, you have to do a certain amount of work before you can put confident numbers on any estimate. So therefore, we're working within the budget that has been given, and what we're working on is trying to make sure that the options that are being considered obviously take into consideration that the budget that we currently have is $25 million. So we're looking at the options that possibly fit into this, and if there are some options that are not within this cost, then they will be looked at as to how much benefit do they bring and how much will is there within, you know, the district to afford this as a district. So this is why I cannot give you confident numbers until we have done some work.
I still do think that as we work through the long-term plan, if you think of these, which probably predate COVID even, there's going to be a movement. So if we're going to work off long-term plan figures, then somewhere along the line, some sort of increase in that has to be at the front end somewhere. So we'll have to make some evaluation as we get there. Big numbers which affect the LTP going forward, and how you do that, I appreciate they'll still be wrong, but they'll be better than something that was done pre-COVID, which we're seeing around the country. Things are moving from 2 to 10, 1 to 5, you know, and that's consistent throughout even our areas. So there needs to be some sort of adjustment in my view, otherwise false expectations getting in there. How you do that is not above my pay grade, but somebody will need to do some estimate for it.
The only risk here is that you do incremental steps that then take you down a path where you're locked in.
No. Yeah.
That's the risk. Anything further there? Councillor Wilson, Chair of Assets, thank you.
My thinking exactly the same as our Chief Executive has just said. Particularly going into this LTP, we really need to think about, and I think we as a council and us as a district really need to understand some of the cost pressures that we are under and are going to continue to be under for the foreseeable future. And Dino, I appreciate the work that you do and your hesitancy to not come back to us with a number, because perhaps we might hang you out to dry on that number, is not where we sit. But we do need to have some greater methodology as to a number that we can work with in our LTPs, because we have to think about that going forward to what those costs and things are going to look. And I don't know how we do that, but it's not a personal thing to you and the work that you do.
Just perhaps, just a suggestion is maybe that could be a debate for the infrastructure committee about how you handle that, so that you've got an idea as to nobody. My understanding at the moment with any of these programs is that even an estimate or a tender or a quote won't be done until the last dot is on that, because they've been stuck so much. So it is difficult, but we have we here have so many projects in the pipeline. You've got to manage those some way. And if you added them all up and put, you know, the changes from 1 to 5 million, put that same ratio on every project you've got, you won't be able to afford them. Yeah. You know, so somehow you've got to get an idea on that, get a priority, and maybe that's a good discussion for the infrastructure.
Can I make one comment on this as well? I think for some of the projects, and I will use Ratana as an example, this is probably something that, yes, can be done easier when an option has been clearly defined. When we have this project, I think there's a discussion that we have talked about, and I think it needs to be maybe done again in the asset and infrastructure space. The appetite around, we know the options, we kind of know what options exist for wastewater treatment and the discharge, what we can do with it. The question now goes to affordability and, you know, the effects on the ratepayers in the district. So it's a little bit more maybe strategic, I would say. What appetite do we have? Are we going for every place needs to be a land irrigation? Are there other alternatives because of the cost? So I think this is where it's hard to put a cost on it, depending on where we're going.
But if you head this to a debate, it might be that you put a range in there. It could be from 10 to 20 million, depending on which one. And then those big ones get selectively looked at more because the little ones won't lose so much, but leave that for a committee.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate space to take this conversation further.
This presumably applies to the next one, Lake Waipuna as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
That one comes up as an item.
Yeah, that comes up later anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's covered later. I'm just interested to know, when do you expect to hear from MOE around that they will actually approve it? Yeah.
Yeah, we will follow up with them after today's meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool,
but
thank
it's
you.
part of, an update to them as well, where we are with the numbers.
Oh, obviously, thank you. Okay.
I think we can skip the next one because that's on an order paper and public excluded. Taihape Papakai wastewater pump station.
Yeah, there's probably no real update there. The work is still continuing on the transformer. That new tank will be installed. I think it was going to be September or October as well. And yes, we're still finalising. I know it's still there, the coast, but we're still finalising with the contractor that credit basically for us saving some money, which is great.
Can you just, with that project, can you just bear in mind the local concerns around how much area needs to actually be fenced off?
Yes.
You know, that the locals developed that park from nothing and they've been very obliging. But the less intrusive our fencing can be, the better.
We are in touch with the local group and we will be working with them at the end of the project.
Just a quick question, if I may, Your Worship, is that while the construction is on or when it's finished?
Finished product.
Just remember, when it's finished, it's all underground? There's nothing above ground?
That's
not
what we were told.
So there might be gravel or similar for vehicle movement maybe, but it's all underground.
We're working with the group, the local group, to understand what the requirements around replanting is. So we're working with the contractor and the group to make sure that.
You can plant them in grass if you want.
Can we leave that with staff because there seems to be 2 stories a little above here.
Unless there's any other question, you might now see that I've added the Taihape wastewater treatment plant as a project on there because that was requested and it is time now, given that we have a $2 million commitment to the upgrades to that treatment plant. You will also see in public excluded there's a paper for an engagement for a contractor to do these upgrades or start the upgrade works.
Can I just say thank you very much?
Sorry, have I missed some questions?
I just wanted to thank Ms Foley for including this and as she says, it's timely and that would be very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one down.
The Martin Water Strategy. Happy to have any.
Yeah, could I just make a comment on that one? And I am mindful of time, but if I could signal that I believe we've got a workshop coming up, still scheduled in September for our assets.
Yes.
If there was scope within this, just wondering where we're at with the what the water treatment, the water looks like. I don't think we've actually received what the test results have actually come back for the quality of the water, the makeup of the water, and whether or not and what that's going to signal as our perhaps next step with design of plant. It just might be something that we could bring to that meeting.
So we have received from our test bore, there was the test done on the water, and the results, if they weren't shared, we can share those definitely.
Yeah.
They're very,
at some stage.
The makeup of the water or the flow.
but so what now is happening, so the test bore had his test done on the quality and the quantity of water that is achievable. Now we're establishing the bore, and at the end of the establishment, the same test will also be run to confirm 100% where we're at, what are we gonna get exactly. And we have already talked to, we're still talking to 2 design companies that are looking at 2 different ways of treating the water. And they have got the details from the test bore, which they also will get the details from the established bore. But that's why, until it's established, this is where that process runs again to 100% confirm where we're at.
Your Worship, I think the main or the most important thing, there's a step where we go from a test bore to a production bore, and the 2 big questions are, is the quality of the chemical quality of the water, is that treatable, and is there enough? So we've ticked both of those off. We tested 3 aquifers, there's one that's better than the other 2, we've picked that one. So there was enough and the quality was good enough. So we then gave the contractor the go-ahead to go on to the production bore. I think the kind of detail that you would want is not the actual chemical analysis of the water, but rather that we've gone beyond that step and it was tick on both those questions.
If I can just add through you, Your Worship, the point that I'm making is if we know what the water quality is, the quality of the water, therefore we know what our build is going to need to be, and is that going to fit within the budgets that we're talking about? I guess that's where it's kind of really going.
And we're working with Arno, looking at these two different technologies to treat the water, and they're just quite different. So we're just in the final process of getting a presentation from them for that detail so that we can feed that back.
Sure.
We'll move on to the amenities building. Excitingly, I don't have to share much about this. Still closing out the final invoices and payments, but we are still within the budget. And there's some teething issues that we're working through, but there has been some groups already using the building, which is exciting.
If I could just share one about that, we've got the Wanganui Women's Representative team are playing Poverty Bay and Taihepe on Saturday, so they'll be the first ones to use. Yeah.
Know what time?
I think it's about 1 o'clock. I'm not 100% on that.
They look fantastic. We just need to keep us moving because we've still got a lot to get through today, guys.
For the Martin Civic Centre, there's no update as such, so there will be further information being brought back to you in a LTP workshop.
We've done.
No further updates to the Martin Rail Hub since last.
Okay, thank you. Right, item number 12, the minutes for committees. Would somebody like to scroll that so I can see it? Could somebody move those as a block, preferably? Councillor Lambert, like a shot. Councillor Duncan seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Please.
Question regarding that.
Other than councillor, question?
Regarding those, the Ratana Community Board, reading through it, there was motions being moved by a person but weren't on the present.
I can answer. Councillor Hira alerted us to that, and she's been included on the minutes, not this version, as in attendance.
Thank you. Councillor Hira, are you happy?
Yes.
Relatively?
But I've actually got a few questions to be honest. Apologies for them coming out and I don't expect them to answer them. But I've just got a couple of questions across a number of these things. So is that okay? Okay, so the first one was about the Hunterville Rural Wool Scheme. So in the minutes it talked about the possibility, and it did get answered, the possibility of in a weather event, water being potentially using Taihepe water. I just wanted to know whether or not it was the thought, well, I'm assuming this isn't about pipes and that this is about transportation of water. Okay.
Councillor Dalgety?
Well, I think the thinking was more that they didn't like the Martin taste of the Martin water, so please could we have some beautiful Taihepe water?
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. I'll talk about 4 others, please.
Yeah.
The Ratana Community Board, in that kōrero, there was an item that was brought up around the community access to the Lake Waipu, and I just wanted to know whether or not that was, because in the reports that are coming through you, through this process that we have with you, Adina, that's sitting at a different level, but how are those being addressed? And that's quite a significant issue for that community.
Yes, so we actually, the project manager and I met with Charlie Mete on the topic as well. Blair, the project manager, will be helping to set up some sort of facilitation around what could be done to move this process a little bit forward. It is sitting with Horizons. Through the Horizons project, which is the cleaning up of Lake Waipu and the restoration of it, there's a lot of expectations, I would like to say, have been set and raised. The access to the lake is currently through private property, and there's no, there's no you can't force them to give people
True.
access.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conversation. I think the landowners are very open and friendly to people wanting to access the lake, and they've done that in the past. So there's a bit of a situation that we are helping the community board with. So we will follow up as much as we can with our contacts with Horizons and helping maybe clarifying some of these expectations that have been set. But it's a concern, yeah, we're aware of.
Thank you. It's just, when I actually went through them, there's some things that I just need to get right in my head. The next thing that I want to, that I'd like some feedback from is to do with the last track meeting. And in the track meeting, there is a cordial in there about the Mayor Andy's talk to track members around the LTP and advocating for health in the district. So I'd just like to know how that is going to translate from track into this space. How does that work?
Into the LTP debate.
Yes, I'm just understanding for myself. How does that go from something that's put
Input from the community group that can come in any way. So with a link to a council aligned organisation, that should be a direct link. If they've got some comments that need to be fed in or ways that can be handled. But of course, once you get into the process, that's open to the public or anybody else can comment. So I would imagine that committee could be part of feeding into the LTP anyway. Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
They'll have a direct line in.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that gets on this table because it got brought up on the track table. And the last thing that I'd just like to say with going through these minutes is how, what's the word, how I thought it was very good that the Martin chair of the community committee, not board, had made an attempt to get around to all of the committees and boards to advocate on behalf of the Meet the candidates. Thank you.
Is there anything else that I need to do before we move to public excluded? No. Right.
Do you need to put that one?
Yes. Would somebody like to move that we move into public excluded for the reasons given? Councillor Carter, Councillor Wilson, those in favour? Aye.